just to kind of, I guess, just give a little introduction to who you are, Cord. Obviously, you're the community manager for Lord of the Rings Online and also Dungeons and Dragons Online, which I don't know too much about. So I'm going to keep this geared more towards LOTRO.
Yep.
But yeah, if you just want to kind of give like a little introduction of like how you got started with SSG, how you got involved with the games and all of that.
I started actually over on the other game side, Dungeons and Dragons Online, as a player in 2006. I have a twin brother. That's one thing you could find out about me. And my twin brother and I got into that game back just buying it off a retail store shelf. And early that next year, so in early 2007, I launched a podcast about that game. And at the time, podcasting was really blowing up, in the process of blowing up. And this one did really quite well. And had not just a lot of players listening to it every week, but also just general podcasting numbers. So we did really well for that time period. And it kind of ended up becoming such a big part of my life and work that I did that when an opportunity came up to join then Warner Brothers Games in 2010, I did that. So I went from an old career in radio and journalism into a career as doing this. Started on the, I wasn't the senior community manager. I was the opposite of that. But, I worked my way up and have managed to date, make it a career since 2010. So.
That's awesome. Wow.
On the thank you. On the Lord of the Rings Online side in particular, I did do a little bit of work back in the day, but at that time there was a structure of essentially a 4-person community team, 2 for DDO and 2 for LOTRO. Each one had their main community manager, Sapience, on the Lord of the Rings Online side, and then at that time, Celestrata Bloodsong, our current brand manager, or current e-commerce manager, I can't, I'm sorry, Seraphina, I messed up your title. I can't remember what your formal title is right now, but
it's all good.
Store stuff.
Yeah.
It was working under Sapience, and I was working under Tolero on the Dungeons and Dragons Online side. But the two of us, besides being hired together, also shared duties plenty of times because people would be in and out of the office or things would be happening. And even as the years went on, we ended up kind of taking on a few other odds and ends tasks with other Warner Brothers games and things at the time. So there was plenty of kind of cross work to be done. So I did a little bit of the LOTRO stuff. Like, for example, I was largely in charge of the old LOTRO lotteries, if you remember them from my LOTRO. That was one of the things that I had to do just about every week, was update that thing, and I know players liked it. And let me tell you, when if you thought it was broken on the end user side, wait till you saw it behind the scenes. But that's why it went away, sadly. But but still, that kind of thing. So I touched LOTRO really going all the way back to about 2010, but did not formally become have that as a split job duty until 2017, when we became Standing Stone Games. At that time, we were acquired by Daybreak and became Standing Stone Games, and they were a publisher, and there we go. So that's how that's all worked out. So then, since then, I've been splitting my duties, half-time LOTRO, half-time DDO, which ends up being kind of 3/4 time both sometimes, and that's just how it works. And then sometimes, like this week, for example, when we're chatting, I have a very heavy focus on LOTRO because we have Update 44 coming out. We've got our 18th anniversary launching. We just had Tier 3 of our latest raid release. And there's also the anniversary event and gifts and everything else. And then in the middle of all that, well, really at the start of all that a few months ago, was the start of our free transfer period to 64-bit Game World. So because of all that work, it's been a focus more often than not of the job I do. But I do have to keep that balance between the two games there. So.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that. That was one of my follow-up questions, is how do you keep a balance between the two games? Like, I feel like, there probably obviously are like daily tasks that you need to do, right? Like keep players informed on both games. But how do you manage, I guess, like, all of your duties with DDO and LOTRO? you have like a spreadsheet maybe, or
No, no. A lot of notifications. I
yeah.
do get a lot of. You just have to get good at it, to be honest, is the answer. But it does, yes, some level of organization as well is involved. And then the other thing is, I'm often asked, well, what does a community manager do? And I've
Yep.
often stated that the answer to that question is, I I'm in charge of internal communications outwards and outwards communications inwards, as it relates to the community specifically of our games. And as such, I'm in those meetings as well, where it's like, hey, can we not do this week because we're launching our anniversary on the LOTRO side or something like
Yeah.
that, and that does happen. That does actually occasionally come up. Now, do I set the schedule? No, but it's a voice, right? And
Right.
and we do work as a team to try to make all that stuff happen. And so you will tend to see, for example, that we separate out our expansions between the two games, in a way that allows shared resources like myself to be able to manage it. And
Yeah.
and otherwise, sometimes, hey, I'm a community manager. If I'm there on a Saturday poking through a Discord looking at bug reports, well, guess what? Welcome to your job. So
Yeah, I know, like I've even reached out to you on like weekends and I'd be
yeah,
like, hey, I need this real quick, and you're like really quick to respond. So
yeah.
one question I got a lot of, because I did ask a few questions to the community, was like, do you ever get any sleep? Because you're always
Yeah.
working. Okay, good.
Yeah, I will actually so I am notoriously not really an early morning person.
Mm,
The most miserable I have ever been in my life was the one time I attempted to do morning radio, and I had to be in the radio station at 4 a.m. every day.
yeah.
And it messed my life up so bad that I was happy to see that one go.
Yeah.
And ever since then, I do tend to, we work from home and we work for video games. And so you typically don't need to be in the office at 6 a.m.,
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean you're not working late, however, as a result. We all put in 8 hours, sometimes more. But that doesn't mean it has to start at 8 a.m. You know
Right.
what I mean? So,
Well, that's good. I'm with you on that. Like I definitely need to be up later. Like I'm waking up at like 11 a.m. and that's early for me. So
to
I
your
get that.
point, though, as well, there is a part of this job that interfaces with people who are often when they're not working.
Right.
That's also the reality of it. And so especially with content creators and that, I need to respect the fact that you're going to contact me when you can. And
Yeah.
that's fine. That's fine. So,
Yeah. No,
yeah.
I appreciate it. I
Mhm.
do appreciate you always reaching out. Like you've helped me out a lot of times with, just small things that have popped up, and I appreciate it because, that's a big part of a community manager. Just, any sort of communications job is to always be communicating.
Yeah.
Kind of
It
going.
helps if you live and breathe these games because I came from the games and I love LOTRO
Yeah.
too. It helps. It does blur work to not work in a way that
Mm.
you see in some other jobs, but particularly for this kind of job where I play video games for fun, I play video games for work, I play these video games for both fun and work.
Yeah.
And then same with I'm interfacing with you, but I'm also hanging out with people sometimes on weekends and stuff too. And it's like, but then I'm also doing formal work with content creators.
Yeah.
It gets kind of blurry is the answer to it. But you
Yeah.
just do your best to manage it. So
Yeah, it's just like Pal's fashion show. You were there for that, and you were having a blast, and that was on a
oh,
Saturday.
so much fun.
Yeah,
Yeah. Oh, it's so cool. That was so
yeah,
good.
that was fun. Kind of going back a little bit to the beginning. I know that you mentioned about like the podcast and a lot of like media and journalism is your background. What do you think got you excited, or at least wanting to go in like those sort of industries, like media journalism, and I guess what piques your interest about that?
Uh, So I've always believed, I do believe, and I know sometimes people like to look at community managers or spokespeople for video games as, paid shills. You'll hear that word, or you will hear, you're just giving the company a line. And I've always made sure, and I believe I can stand up pretty honorably for this, which is that we may not be able to tell you everything, but what we tell you needs to be the truth.
Yeah.
And I do believe that, and I do enforce that as well. So you will sometimes hear, all those kind of marketing buzzwords and that, but it's because it's the truth if I'm using them, and really, so I've long had a belief that whatever is going on in the world, in terms of opinions and things like that,
Yeah.
there is still heavy value in, well, truth, fact, documentation, nonpartisan such as well. And that's really what's always attracted me to journalism in particular. The radio thing, I just got lucky.
Yeah.
I was sitting eating a plate of French fries at a local town that I lived in when I was a teenager at the age of 15, and somehow I was talking, and the program director needed someone that night to run ad roll for the Twins games, and said, "Hey, you want to make $20 a night?" And I was like, "Yeah." And so I went into the radio station, and they would give me a sheet of paper that was printed off one of those machines with the little tear strips.
Yeah.
This is back a while back now. And I would be like, "This Twins broadcast is brought to you by Arby's," that kind of thing. And
Nice.
that was it. And I would just knock it out in a couple of minutes, set the boards, make sure the Twins broadcast was going, and then I had a couple hours to kill until it was over. Well, 17 hours because it's a baseball game, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And then I would just sit there in the background and do that. So that was my start in radio. I was also into music and things, and I went to music school at the university for 1 year, and then I dropped out.
Yeah.
And then I went to college for another year, and then it didn't really work out for me. I just didn't know what I wanted to do. So I was doing the music thing for a little while, but that also didn't work out very well. And I needed to figure out, well, what do I want to do for work? And I already had an opportunity again in radio because I had done some college radio and all that at the time. So I ended up getting an associate's degree in broadcasting from one of those kind of trade school sorts of deals.
Nice.
And it wasn't much of an education, but what it was is a foot in the door. And so I got my first job in radio. And then from there, I just kept doing it all the way up. I worked in like Media Market Country. Probably the biggest station was an FM station out of Western Wisconsin, Eau Claire, WAXX FM. I was on their mornings. I did a lot of news for them at the time because I did a lot of radio news. I've always been a big public radio fan in terms of the quality of a lot of their journalism. And so I often wanted to do that as a career. So it just sort of fell into it. And then I did it for a while, until the iPod came out and killed everything. And that's pretty much what happened. So,
That's awesome. Yeah.
There's now one person where there used to be like 12. That's the reality of radio right now.
Wow.
I'm not even joking.
Yeah.
So,
It's interesting because my mom actually worked in radio as well. And she told me the whole thing about radio, and she was like, "Don't go into radio. It's not working out right now, Aubrey." But there are aspects you could definitely take from it.
It's the best worst job I ever had. I absolutely I got to cover then candidate, now future President Barack Obama on the campaign trail and hear his Iowa caucus acceptance speech that night from about 50 feet away. I've met Tony Dungy. I've met a bunch of football players. I've been in an elevator with Elio Castroneves. I've taken personal phone calls from Danica Patrick. I was stationed in Indianapolis for a while, so I covered the Indy 500 every year and things like that. And that's just, and I could go on and on and on, but it was the best job that you had to work 80 hours a week for and got paid like less than minimum wage for, and everyone was awful to you. Yeah. So it's just, it was a trip. That's for sure.
There's bright sides and bad sides, but But it sounds like you had a good time, and that's really good. Yeah, I didn't know.
And I
any
learned
of this.
things.
Yeah.
I would also state that I learned things. How to deal with trolls. How to deal with being in a place, frankly, where maybe they don't want you there, or there's hostility, or whatever. And to be honest, that is part of working with the internet as well.
Yeah.
So developing that armor and that sort of trade skill to not be bothered when they're yelling at me was among the things that I learned from that experience in radio and journalism. So.
Yeah. Wow, that's great. I mean, it's not great that you have to deal with that, obviously, but it's good that it kind of gave you like that shell, because that's something I'm still learning,
I'm not going to poor me. We're a pretty good community here in Lotro. There
Yeah.
are people who have it much worse than I do.
Oh yeah. Lotro's great. In terms of, I guess, regarding like the Lotro community, I do want to touch on this because I know you just made the official Lotro Discord. Talk to me a little bit about that, like putting that together. I'm sure that was a little bit of a process, but also, what's something that you kind of hope players, I guess, get from the official like Lotro Discord? Do you want it to be a place where people can follow up and have groups, or do you kind of want it to be like a resource or like a guide where people can go and find more questions about the game?
I think I want it to be the best place for real-time guidance.
Yeah.
I would put it that way. I think in terms of emulating the community's overall knowledge of the game, I don't think that is suitable. But specifically, like, oh my gosh, I'm sitting in Bree and I got to get to where do I got to go? Whatever. And that being an opportunity that, hey, you're already hanging out with other Lotro players and I can get that immediate answer. Sounds good. I love the idea of people using it to group up and things like that. You can even send links, you can just copy paste it in game and drop people into a audio chat room, things like that. But people don't have to either. So far, it seems to really just be a gigantic general chat, really,
Yeah.
with lots and lots and lots of subcategories, also full of chat. We're across 17,500 here, and that's a lot. And you can tell that it's not, 5,000 people and 10,000 bots either, because just due to the volume of posting, it's for real. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's been great. It's been awesome.
It's got to be a little difficult to moderate, especially because I'm not sure like who all is helping you with the moderation. Like I know there's a moderating team, but just in terms of like the size of SSG or just even volunteers who are helping moderating, like it's not huge like other competitor MMOs at all from what I've seen. So I can only imagine.
You're right. You actually call out a point which is it's a bit of a pain point right now, to be honest. I think both for the community, for the moderators, and for Standing Stone Games, and we need to find the right pace, tone, and sort of make sure we hit that right spot for all moderation. And trying to manage something that can get that busy with a team of volunteers and be consistent and establish the rules and be, do all that work and handle all the appeals, including all the ones from people who don't agree with you, which is frequently, that kind of thing. Turns out if you're in a fight with someone, right? You don't like to be told that you're wrong.
Yeah.
So it's how it works. But it's something that we're in the ongoing process to find. I've talked to the moderation team quite a bit, and these are just all volunteer Lotro players. There are a couple dozen of them, really. We have a pool of about 30 and maybe about 20 or so active, right? Because it is volunteer. We can't require anyone to do this.
Right.
And especially when things get heated over like the 64-bit server chat, there are some moderators who are like, oh, I don't know if I can. I want to help, but do I want to put myself out there, kind of a thing?
It's tough.
And so it is tough, but and the moderators have done a really good job. But it should be recognized that this went from nothing to 200 miles an hour over the course of about a week. And there are some kind of growing pains with it. Consistent, and I think establishing the level of moderation that both you want and we need is an ongoing task.
Right. Oh yeah, for sure. I definitely think that, you hit on it. The Discord blew up, in my opinion. I didn't even expect to see so many people go in at one given time. And something else, just kind of touching back more on community, is that you have all volunteers who are pretty much helping with the moderation of the Discord, which is just fantastic. I don't see that with many other games, or at least not consistently.
It was the blocker for why we couldn't really do a Discord, because my internal estimate and the one that I had given to other people in the company was I expect about 10,000 people here. And that would be based on numbers pulled from generally the larger community Discords, just combined with a little bit of it being official and things like that. So I was targeting roughly 10,000 and saying one person, that person being me, cannot do this, right?
Yeah.
And so we had to do something. And it was also not realistic to think that we could hire, say, a team of part-time people or something like that. That's just, it's not in the budget,
Yeah.
frankly. So we had to find a solution. And then over the past year, last year, Daybreak Games, which is our publisher,
Yeah.
established a set of volunteer community moderator guidelines for other discords that were in place, like PlanetSide 2, Magic the Gathering, DCUO, things like that. And I don't believe all of them are necessarily utilizing it, but they went through the process to sort of say, we can do this if you do X, Y, and Z. And so that opened up the opportunity for late last summer, really, to start its go time on this Discord and do it. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's great.
So that's what we're doing.
Yeah. Well, congratulations on the Discord, because it's impressive to have so many people involved, and it is like a community effort, and even to have community members chat in it. So that's awesome. Just kind of like, I guess, just kind of like wrapping up on a little bit about you, or just some general things. What is something that you really hope that players like know about you, or what's something that I guess that you really want to emphasize that you like about like the LOTRO community, and what also is something that you want players to keep in mind even for like future expansions coming out with the game as well?
Okay.
There's like 3 questions in there. Sorry.
I think I heard 3 questions.
Yeah.
So the first one really was, what do I want people to know about me?
Yes.
From the perspective of someone who would be watching this because you play the Lord of the Rings online, I would like people to know that I am not a Tolkien scholar, but I have, in fact, read the books since I was a kid. And so, although I probably can't say the names right, because in my head it was like, Sir from the,
Yeah.
when you're 12 and reading this, you're like, I don't know. But I do have basic Tolkien proficiency.
That's good.
And otherwise, I'm a gigantic kind of D&D nerd, retro video game nerd. I was into retro before it was retro, as they say.
Nice.
And there you go. And I'm also into records, as you might see.
Yeah. Yeah. The music background's still there.
Yeah. And I live in an old house. I live in an old 1880 farmhouse, and I actually like it this way.
That's cool. I like that.
Yeah.
If it makes you feel any better, though, Court, I can't pronounce half of the stuff in LOTRO, and I still haven't even read the books, so you're okay. Yeah.
I need like a Chris Pearson button where I can just have him say the words at the touch of a button. Some kind of AI translator that is Chris Pearson.
Yeah. And then kind of going on to the second question, what's something that you love about like the LOTRO community, or even DDO's community?
Well, let's talk about the LOTRO community specifically. Mm-hmm. The core of our kind of music, play, creative, fashion, that core community is so much a heart and soul of this game, and it exists in various fashions in other games, but I don't think it exists anything specifically like it does in LOTRO. And I think that's just one of the coolest things ever.
Yeah, I love the music system. I've never seen anything like it, and I think that is such like a seller point. Yeah. So I'm really glad you touched on that.
It's not just the music, although that's obviously a lot of the big focal point of it too, but it is even like the plays and the lectures and the way that people will actually just sort of get together to enjoy Tolkien time together in the world in whatever form that may be. Whether it's playing a cover a Slayer or putting on an actual play, that kind of stuff. It's just amazing.
That's cool. So yeah, I love that. And I guess like just kind of like hinting towards future stuff, what is something that I guess us as players should maybe keep an eye out for, or something that you hope doesn't even have to be for like future expansions or content coming out, but just something that you want us to kind of keep in mind going forward, regarding anything that could potentially be coming out in the future?
That's a pretty open-ended question there.
Yeah.
I would say that really this week is going to be the debut of Update 44 and the anniversary gifts. So make sure you log in and do that. We also have a couple of patches that'll be coming out after that. And then we have a summer update. The anniversary event is debuting with a bunch of new missions that can also be run as delvings. And we're moving forward with that plan into midsummer as well.
Wow.
But while the anniversary was somewhat proof of concept, the midsummer is going to be even bigger in scope because we're going to the Shield Isles. You know, right now
Yeah.
it's all in Minas Tirith. We're going all the way over to Umbar and doing the Shield Isles and having a bunch of midsummer stuff in the Shield Isles. So that is on the horizon to really look forward to as well. And the time, I'm always afraid to say this because as soon as I say it, I'm going to cause some kind of ripple in the timeline where it gets kicked down the road to like 2026.
Yeah.
But
It happens.
you know, Orion talked in his most recent letter to the players about like the foundations being laid for kinship work later this year, and I'm really excited to for us to be able to share some of that kinship work with you. I know one of the first pieces currently being worked on really has to do with the ability to communicate within the guild, or not guild, but kinship. And I don't know, but like I say, it's one of those things that we're not even there enough to know it'll be there, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So I'm a little afraid to get into more detail until it's like, and this is for sure going to happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
And then our expansion later the year, which will be really cool.
Max level will increase to 160, so I'm excited for that.
Yep.
Perfect. Yeah. Well, thank you for, mentioning about the future stuff coming out, because I know it's a little tedious where, things could always change. Yeah, and then I do actually have a few questions from the community that are just kind of random, I guess. But before we get into that, is there anything else that you want to touch on regarding like the game or like duties of a community manager, or just anything that you want players to know?
Oh, no, I guess I'm okay there.
Yeah, no worries.
There's lots of stuff out there with my name on it. You can do a little digging if you want.
Yeah, fair.
Questions from the community is fine.
Yeah.
I will also answer randomly, so by the time we get to the end, you'll know the answers I've given, and then you can rearrange them to the questions.
Yeah. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
These are pretty like random questions. I expected some serious ones. There's a few, but all right. So the first question is from Bad Cactus 819, and they ask, crunchy or smooth peanut butter? Which do you prefer?
Crunchy.
Yeah.
Yep.
I like crunchy too. Bellwayne 1386 any plans to clean up or revise legacy currencies like commendations or scripts? And they also mentioned good job with the game. It's still one of my favorite game worlds.
When you say scripts, does the questioner mean ancient scripts?
I think they mean ancient scripts. I don't know. I feel like they're still pretty needed with the legendary weapons.
I would think so too.
Yeah. But
that's what I was wondering, is there some other kind of thing we're calling scripts that I'm not thinking of?
Yeah, I took it as ancient scripts as well, so I'm not too sure. I wish they specified. I guess we could focus on commendations.
Well, that's true too, sure. In general, both marks and commendations are something we'd love to take a fresh look at, but the time to do it within all the other processes is always the tricky part, isn't it?
Yeah.
We're focusing next really on, and it's debuting this week, with the idea of being able to create homesteading. What's the word that we got? Homesteading credits that
coins.
Are basically coins that are a subversion of writs, and it's part of a wider look at offering broader currency reform, and I think that at some point we'll hit marks and commendations as well, because I think both of those need some work. But at the moment, my understanding is people typically have far more of them than they know what to do with.
Yeah. I know I do. So yeah, perfect.
The sad reality of that means that in some ways you approach it by either giving them something to spend it on, or by figuring out what else you can do that's clearly not meeting the need there, right?
Right.
So either, you got to figure that one out. It's a better position than there's being a high demand for the currency and no one having near enough.
Yeah.
And so when it comes to trying to resolve kind of pressing issues, the former tends to maybe be a little deprioritized sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
Another question. This is from Ganteron. Ganteron asks, if you could add another class into the game, what would it be? Also, will you be adding any new classes in the future? I don't know if you can say that, but
I don't know. Like, I couldn't, even if I wanted to, I couldn't say, oh yeah, we're working on X.
right.
But will we be having a new class in the future? For sure. For
Yeah.
sure, we're not done releasing classes. I just don't know the when or the where or the what.
Yeah, fair. Yeah.
Yeah.
What class would you have if you could make one up?
That's such a tough question. I need to think about that one a little more.
Yeah.
Because in many ways, it would be, I don't know what it would be.
There's so many options. There was a I guess idea that I kind of liked about like a song singer class, like almost like a Disa from Rings of Power, I believe, or like how the dwarves can like almost sing to the mountains, and something like that would be kind of cool. But I was like, I don't know how that would work in the game. But
could you do like an old school herald? The person who blows the horn to start the battle or something like that?
Yeah, that would be cool.
I mean, but we already got that pretty well covered in the
pretty
game,
much,
so,
yeah.
I mean,
I know that's the problem. Is like we already have
know.
so much. It's a good problem to have, I guess.
No, I can't think of one off the top of my head. I'm
yeah,
sorry.
No worries.
I'm
You're great.
loss.
You're good.
Yeah.
It's a tricky one. I know. I get asked that sometimes. I'm like, I have no idea.
I'd be tempted to say something like Games Master, that like someone who can like play checkers and chess and other kinds of lore appropriate games, but that isn't a class. That's a hobby or something. So.
Yeah, fair. Yeah. I got you. 2 more questions. This is the last like serious game one, I guess. Joao asks, any plans to bring back lifetime subs? Because I know that was something that the Turbine previously had in place. Any plans for that by any chance?
No.
Okay.
Sorry to say. The answer
figured.
is no. To further expound on that question, though, it was offered for a very limited time early on when the game went free to play, as sort of a, we need you to believe in us. And if you're willing to believe in us, we will reward you. And that was really the purpose of that lifetime membership at the time. And no matter how negative you want to get, in the community about the work we've done over the past 18 years, I think we can all pretty much agree that they got their money's worth.
Yeah.
So, but the reality is I don't think we would be in a position to do that. And if we were, then, what would be the reason for that? What would be the cause for us to want to do that sort of lifetime membership? That's not to say it could never happen, but I really don't see it ever happening either. Right.
Yeah. Personally, I don't either, but I think people keep asking because they're like, I missed out and I want to, I want to, have the perks. So yeah. Last question. It's a pretty difficult one, all right? Commissar Inbram asks, how do Urukai know what a menu is? Is meat really back on it?
I agree, by the way.
Yeah.
Yes. They might have a menu to the extent that some kind of chef on their camp would be real sick of telling people what's for dinner.
Yeah.
If asked, so perhaps might scrawl something and tack it to a thing saying, point to it when everyone's asking for dinner or whatever. So in theory, the concept of a military-style group menu could in fact exist.
Yeah.
And if they were on a long run and they didn't have time to do a lot of hunting, then perhaps they were down to their hardtack or things like that.
Yeah.
So meat could be back on the menu.
Yeah. It could
because they happen to stumble into some.
Yeah.
But still, yes, I agree with you.
Yeah, I love it. Well, thank you for that. Yeah. that's pretty much it. But I appreciate you taking time, Cord, for out of your busy schedule. I know, especially with the anniversary coming up, it's got to be crazy. But yeah, and I just on behalf of all LOTRO players and even DDO players, even though I don't know anything about DDO, but I just want to say thank you for all the work that you've done, and everybody at SSG for that matter, for putting in so much like love and enjoyment into the game, because without you guys, like, this game wouldn't be where it is today. So thank you for that.
Let me close with that then. Yeah, this has been a passion on our part for many years, whether you're a relatively new employee or longer term with us, and we do this because we love the game. And, and we really appreciate you being here and everyone else being here for the 18th anniversary. Also, congratulations on both YouTube and Twitch and your shorts and such, TikToks and things. You seem to be doing pretty good there. So.
Yeah, thanks. Well, congratulations.
Like and subscribe /follow /join /merge whatever they're calling it these days.
Yeah, you hit everything. Yep. Great job. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this is a great way to celebrate 18 years for LOTRO. So yeah, I'm excited for everything that's to come. So yeah, just keep doing what you're doing.
I think everyone knows this, but then as soon as I think that, I'm proven wrong. For those who don't know, every Friday, noon Eastern, on twitch.tv/LOTRO stream is when I do a weekly show. It is a 1-hour show of Q&A and general questing and news. So
yeah, and then obviously join the official Discord for updates as well and everything, and Twitter and Blue Sky and just everything. Yep.
And if Audrey's on, you can just watch that channel instead and just watch my lame stuff afterwards.
No. Hey, I'm watching the live streams if I'm not live, so it all goes back to you guys. So.